Thanks for tuning in today. I've got two guests on this episode. I've got the lovely Alisa and also her mum, Laura. Now, Alisa and Laura are part of our community support forum, and I've been watching Alisa's progress probably over the last 12 months or so, I would say, when she first sort of came into my sort of radar. And she's really done an amazing amount of self-development and has come so far with her arthritis that it's exciting to have you on this episode and to hear all about it. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Now, you're all rugged up there, Alisa. Is it cold?
Oh, I know. It's just a really fuzzy jacket. It's cute. That's the only reason.
Right, yeah. So tell us, what have you been through? When did this all begin for you? What did you get diagnosed with, and what happened next?
So, from what I remember, I was still in high school. I was in my senior year. I was definitely having symptoms before I was diagnosed, and somehow I always came up with some strange reason as to why I was having, these pains. I'm like, oh, I just pulled something, or like I strained something, and I don't know how I justified it in my head every time, because it happened a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it really became something that I was aware of when one of my fingers became swollen, and it was swollen for months. I don't even know how long, maybe like 6 months.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of ignored that too. And then another one of my fingers started to get swollen. And that's when I was like, okay, there's something wrong.
Yep.
So we made a doctor's appointment, and I didn't think anything of it.
Right. You weren't expecting some big, horrible diagnosis.
No. So I don't even remember. I think I was like out with a friend, and then my mom called me and was like, you need to come home because the doctor needs to tell you. I don't think they told you first.
No,
they just said that they
18
needed
and over, so it's medical privacy, so they have to tell you first.
So I knew she was concerned because they didn't tell her, and she was like, you need to come home as soon as possible so they can tell you so you could tell me.
Sure.
So I called them back, and they told me that I had a rheumatoid factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, I'm not that much older now, but I feel like I've grown a lot. And at the time I was like totally in denial, blew it off, was like, still, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, my mom was like, holy moly. I'm, doing a lot of research about it. And it's, wow, there's just so much. It's really hard to like do it chronologically.
Yeah, sure.
So I was still in high school.
Mm-hmm. And was it that they said rheumatoid arthritis, or at which point does it cross over from juvenile to rheumatoid in terms of a diagnosis? Is it 18?
I don't know, but the doctor did. We both have the same general practitioner, and he said she has rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like I definitely had it before I was 18.
Right.
But I was diagnosed at 18.
Right. Okay.
So it was considered rheumatoid arthritis, but maybe I did have juvenile because I had symptoms before that.
Okay.
Now, so
maybe I can guide you a little bit. What happened with regards to that? Would have been a general practitioner, ran the blood test, saw high rheumatoid factor, gave you a diagnosis. then did you go and see a specialist rheumatologist who then discussed heavy meds with you?
I did not.
No, what he did, in a way, he sent us to a rheumatologist, but she was taking place of the original one you were assigned with, and she was sitting there talking to you about your hands and feet. When
okay, yeah.
You did get sent to one.
They recommended medication for me, but I just no.
Okay.
Like, my whole idea in my head was like, I'm so young and I know what heavy medication can do to a person, and I just was not about that. I was almost like, I would rather be in a lot of pain than slowly deteriorate myself with medication.
Yeah, I had the same exact feeling. So I was 33, so I was quite a lot older than you were when you were diagnosed, but I still, felt very young. I know from your perspective, 33 seems really old, but when you get to 33, you still feel really young. And so especially when you get diagnosed with something of this kind of proportion, actually 31, I was 31. And so I also was in sort of, no way is this A, that bad, and B, something that I'm going to have to take meds for the rest of my life. I was just like you, but just, a decade older when I was, or a little bit more than a decade older. So I can completely relate to that. And when I eventually went on methotrexate, I felt like it just was everything against what I felt like I should be doing. But I got to a point where I had nowhere to go. I mean, I got that bad. So I'm curious as to how long it took you before, you started to adopt natural therapies and stuff, because unless we do that, the disease gets on top of us and we eventually have to succumb to medication. So I'm curious as to how long you left it before you started to make progress.
Yeah.
Because you started getting really bad.
Yeah. So after I was diagnosed, I started associating the random flare-ups that I would get to my arthritis, and they at that point weren't that bad. There were days where it would, I would obviously be in pain, but it wasn't to where I was like, I have no choice but to go on medication. I was always like, I can handle this. And then I don't remember, I want to say it was a year after that where I noticed that it was getting worse.
Yeah.
But again, not to a point where I was like, I need medication. But but again, that's just the kind of person that I am, where I'm like, I can take it. I can take it,
Yeah. That's funny. I noticed a lot of people with, rheumatoid have an extremely high pain tolerance level. It's amazing what we'll put up with when we think we're kind of used to it. And you do develop this pain tolerance that if someone else stepped into your body during the period that you were describing was not too bad, they would have freaked out and what the heck? I got to get out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do tolerate a lot more than we realize, I think, a lot of the time. Okay. So what happened after that?
So my mom was doing a lot of research into it at the time, and that's when she found was it Dr. Barbara Allen?
Well, before you even listened to me, though, you really had a bad flare up at a music festival, and that's when you really
no. This was before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this was before.
Yeah, I'm talking about when you got
what happened is I saw. Okay. This is what happened is I saw your video and you were doing a lecture and a TED Talk, and you mentioned Barbara Allen. And because you live in Australia, I thought, well, Barbara Allen's over here. I'll go check out her book and talk to her first. And I did. So I went ahead and got her an ALCAT test. And that basically shows you what foods you've been eating lately that you're reacting to.
Yeah.
And so her idea is that you rotate the food. So then you go from there. It worked for a little while.
Yeah. So I didn't really understand all the the science behind it and, you know, the healing of the gut and everything. I was just looking for like a shortcut, I guess.
Sure.
Which now I'm like, that doesn't work. Because, you know, I was like young, I was hanging out with my friends, I was doing all these things. I was like, I have this, but like, I don't really want to like, you know, go full fledged and like really figure it out. I was like, you know, if you have something I can do, yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's over here like, we need to, I don't know. Of course, she's my mom. So I followed that ALCAT test. And it was pretty crazy accurate.
Okay, good.
Because a lot of the things that were flagged as like red, like the things that I should stay away from the most, when I would eat them, because I still was like, let me try it out. Yeah. I would feel pain within 6 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
And yeah, it would last for like, I would get a flare up and it would last for like a day or a day and a half.
So it was very obvious.
It was very obvious. Yeah. And it confirmed it in my mind. I was like, wow, okay. That's when I realized it has to do with what I'm eating.
Good. Okay. You were certain about that by that point. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of person that I am, where things have to make sense. There has to be an A to B thing going on, a correlation. So that's when I was like, okay, that's strange. And it kind of piqued my interest as to why that happens. And for a while, of course, I was just kind of like still following that ALCAT test. And it worked for a good amount of time, a few months, 6 months. I'm just like guesstimating.
Yeah.
And then there came to a point where even though I was avoiding those foods, my symptoms started to come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I went to a music festival. A lot of walking. I was camping. It was really hot. I wasn't eating good food.
Yeah.
And one of the days I woke up and was just in so much pain. Yeah. Like my whole upper body was like really stiff. It was a pretty bad flare up.
Yeah.
And when I came back home, I was like, I felt stuck. I felt like mentally stuck. Like, okay, I've followed this first program, the ALCAT test, and I'm getting worse.
Yeah. So you start to feel a sense of panic at that point, because everything that you've known to be your solution looks like no longer being a solution, and it's very, very frightening.
Yeah, I was really scared at that point. Just for my future, I just thought the worst.
Now, by the way, this is not often when we make our biggest discoveries, as I'm sure you're about to share. Sometimes when we're at our absolute wit's end and we have a feeling like the world's about to crumble, that's when we look in places we haven't looked before, and we explore things that we've never explored before. And so many times outside of just rheumatoid, I've found that in my life as well. And I think, okay, some perceived disaster has happened. I'm in all sorts of trouble, but then you make a breakthrough, and that so often happens if we're looking for the breakthrough if we're searching for the answer.
Yeah. I completely agree. Anytime like mentally I've hit rock bottom, after that I just am filled with a lot of like passion and like drive.
Yes.
And I know at that point my mom had already looked into your program and mentioned it to me before, and I didn't really, I wasn't like in looking to it because I was like, oh, I already have this and it's working. So when that point came where I was like, I need something else, she brought it up again. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. And I was always pretty apprehensive about that, about starting your program. From my perspective, because I have never had any dietary restrictions. Except for when I was like a toddler, I was like allergic to like berries, but then like I stopped being allergic to them. So my whole life I just was like able to eat whatever I want, and so that kind of scared me a little bit, to think like I was, I'm going to have to like be strict about it. But at that point I was like, I need to do this.
Good.
So, my mom, started giving me the information. At that point I was still a little bit like resistant. But I was in it. I was going to do it. And by the time she started sharing the information with me, and by the time I actually really started it, there was like a time where I was like fighting it. Where I was like, I want to do this, but I was just like, I just kept making excuses.
Yeah, I think I recall that. This is around about the time when your mum was sharing with us inside the support forum, and she was saying that, she still wants to party, but she's doing it, but then she'll like cheat a little bit because she wants to party. And it was this there was a sort of an onboarding period where you weren't sure if you were kind of on or you were kind of off, It
was almost like, I don't even know, like, I was just like, I don't know. I was like, I'm over it. I don't want to do this. And then I'd be like, no, but I have to. And it was just like this back and forth thing. But when I first started, the first part of it, the sweet potato, the that's right, the juicing. That was so intense for me. I felt like I was in it at that point. Like I was really about it. Like I felt like I knew it was the right thing to do. So I didn't back out at that point. When I started juicing, I was like, okay, like I'm in this, but I was just so irritated and like fog brain and like just so pissed. Like I was doing it, like I was drinking it, but I was like, and like I was working at that point too. But my managers were like really understanding about it. They were like, okay, like I was hosting at a restaurant, so they just had me out front, and usually we stand, but they like gave me a little chair and I was just like sitting out front.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah. So they were super understanding with that. Cause all I had to do was like be honest with them and like tell them what I was going through. Nobody's going to be like, oh, well, I don't care,
Yeah.
They were very sympathetic. And then after the juicing phase, then, it's the sweet potato, quinoa, buckwheat.
The dulce seaweed, remember the buckwheat mixed
Okay, so oh my gosh, your recommendation was to mix the buckwheat, quinoa, and seaweed together.
Yeah.
I hated it. like I learned after, like I could totally eat it. Like I could eat the quinoa, eat the buckwheat, and do like the seaweed in the broth. Like later,
like
that was better for
on
me.
the sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my way of doing it later. I found out
It became a soup, the buckwheat separate, and then the quinoa separate, yeah, and some amaranth.
But when I first started, my mom was like, "That's how he did it, so let's try that."
Yeah. Sure.
And
we went for it. We did eat it.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all. I was like, so I was just, I was still doing it. I was eating it, but I was not enjoying it.
Yes. Well, it's like the way that it's written. There's no ramp on. It's like one day you're eating like whatever you want. You could have the worst Western diet ever, and the next day you're eating foods that you didn't even know how to spell or pronounce, and it's just suddenly the transition can shock the system.
Yeah, it was very cold turkey, but at the same time, like even though it was difficult, like I knew it was the right thing to do.
Cool.
Like I was set in like going down that path. I wasn't gonna even though I was being mean and crabby and stuff, I wasn't gonna stop because I knew how I felt before I started, and I was like, I don't want to go back to that. You know,
pain is a great motivator, right?
Yeah. Totally. So and then I figured out my own method of doing it. Eating it separately worked a lot better for me, and I could tolerate it. It didn't taste bad. I was like, okay, I feel good about this.
Okay. So how long until you started to feel improvements and also start to get used to that way of eating? Were you a couple of weeks, or what happened?
Yeah, so it was definitely a few weeks. I remember after the recommended, what was it, like 12 days to start introducing new stuff.
Yeah.
What was the first? I can't remember the first. Was it lemon?
It was lemon.
Try to do lemon over as a dressing. To a salad. And I had a reaction to that.
All right. Yeah.
My index finger started to swell up. I didn't get a flare up. It wasn't pulsating, I'm in pain. It was just a slow, stiffness in my hands.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, can't do that. Went back to the
basics.
The basic
Your
foods.
baseline foods. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so we waited a week and then tried, was the mung dal beans.
Oh, yeah. So you skipped through that.
Yeah, tried that.
Tried that. Then I had a reaction to that. So in short, we were trying a lot of different things, and I kept reacting.
Okay, that's not uncommon. Yeah.
And I was pretty frustrated at that point because I was like, I'm in the program, I'm supposed to be moving on. My mom's like, that's not how it works. She kept reassuring me, everybody's different.
Yeah.
And so I stuck with it.
Yeah.
So it was a while. I don't know. It was way longer than 12. It felt like way longer than 12 days.
Could have been a couple of months, right?
Before
it was more like 4 months before you could actually.
Well, no, I mean, it was about a couple months before I could introduce something and I didn't get a reaction.
Yeah. Because
I remember even a few weeks after my mom put cinnamon on the sweet potato, and I got a really bad reaction to cinnamon for some reason.
Yeah.
My hip swelled up really bad.
Yeah, I saw that. Yes.
Right.
Swelled up puffy like a grapefruit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, something as small as cinnamon,
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Green beans, for instance, would do something like that to me. What else? Broccoli. Innocent vegetables that you wouldn't dream would create problems. there's a couple of examples that would really set me off: green beans and broccoli.
Yeah. So I was on the baseline diet for at least a couple of months.
Yeah.
And
which, by the way, is not that big a deal, because recently we had that whole baseline program analyzed by the nutritionist, and it meets every vitamin, mineral, essential fatty acid, calories. I mean, the whole thing is legit. I mean, it can be used as a long-term diet, as long as all aspects, as long as, for instance, the sweet potato is not left out, and as long as the pseudo grains are the sort of the bulk of the calories, and we don't leave out the seaweed, we don't leave out the greens. All of it's important, but if everything's eaten in adequate quantities, then it's a legitimate long-term kind of program, and it's amazing because it's just so simple, but it's so nutrient dense.
No, I totally I agree with that wholeheartedly, because when I was on the baseline diet, physically felt great.
Yeah.
Like mentally I was like so bored of the food.
Sure. Yeah.
But like I kept doing it because I wasn't getting any flare-ups. Like when I stuck with this baseline diet, my fingers that had been swollen for at least a year, 2 years, went down. And that was like so crazy.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, I know that this works. So even though I was like, they're troubleshooting and there was a lot of like ups and downs, I knew that it was working.
Yes.
So yeah, physically when I was on this baseline diet, no flare-ups, which was just so amazing, right? yeah, it was amazing. It was like, it was like back and forth, like, this is awesome. And then like other days where I'd be like, I'm bored of this food, but I stuck with it.
Yeah. Well, I was similar. I was exactly the same. I don't draw as many parallels with every guest I speak to, but with you, I had a lot. I couldn't get off that baseline foods. I was stuck on that month after month after month, and I dared not try anything else because I was too paranoid that I was going to stuff things up, and I just felt fantastic. And I thought, look, I'd been coming at this previously from a raw food diet for 8 months when I first started trying dietary stuff, and that was way harder. So to be able to eat some cooked food and be able to have some salty, diverse tastes, and, I thought I knew of a worse scenario dietary-wise, which sounds hard, but there is a harder way to go. And so I thought, this is at least better than that. And I will stick with this because I feel really, really good. And I thought to myself, what if I have to do this for a whole year or a year and a half? It's still better than the pain and more drugs. It's still better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Because that was, medication was on the very bottom of my list. And I was like, if I'm getting progress from this, I'm going to keep going this way.
Yeah.
So I was sticking to it. I was on the baseline diet for a good few months. And, we'd try things here and there, but I would still kind of get flare-ups. I'm trying to remember the first thing that I had that wasn't the baseline food that I didn't get a reaction to.
Was it avocado or?
We did squash too,
Yes,
which is like,
squash is a really easy thing to get back in. Yeah.
Because I feel like it's like kind of closely related to sweet potato.
And the only reason it's not part of the baseline is because I never ate it. And so I don't want to, this is such an important responsibility to put something like this out into the world and to back it the way that I back it. And I don't want any tiny leak in this that I can't stand by and defend. And I never ate yellow squash during my baseline days, and that's the only reason it's not in the first 12 days, because I can't stand by it, and defend it from the rooftops, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to interject that I did everything she did with her so that if she had to go back on the baseline, I would go back on the baseline so that I could defend exactly what the program, exactly what she was doing. So she have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, totally. So when she was doing that with me, she couldn't be like, oh, just do it. It's easy or whatever. Not that it's easy, but just do it. You can do it. She was, doing it with me where it was like,
that's amazing commitment and the love of mother and daughter,
Yeah, that helped me. Words can't describe.
I knew what rheumatoid arthritis was before she did, so I was terrified.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe one of the early foods was yellow squash. You might have been able to, were you able to get some fruits in like cantaloupe or blueberries? Or
Yes. Cantaloupe and papaya.
Oh, good, because they're two of my favorites. Two of the absolute best foods. Yeah.
I remember those were two of the things that I added on with my baseline diet that I wasn't getting a reaction to.
Do you remember what you said when I first served you?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so before
you said it smells like butt.
Before
you're such a brat.
I hated papaya. Like, I just hated the way it smelled. I thought it smelled like farts. Like, I just was like not about it. But because I was like eating this baseline diet for so long, my taste buds had changed.
Exactly.
Like, I noticed they were so much more sensitive to like the tastes of things. And I was like appreciated the taste of food so much more. And so I was like, before I was like, I hate papaya because I was thinking of how I didn't like it before that I started this program.
Yeah.
But when I tried it afterwards, I really liked it.
Okay.
I like tasted things in it that I didn't taste before. Which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. That's cool. I remember I actually have eaten cheese sometime, and it's not the last year, but at some point, I forget why, I was on a cruise ship or something, and sometimes when you're isolated from your own kitchen and the foods that you need, your starvation can kick in, you panic sometimes, and I think like some mashed potato had some cheese in it or on it or something like that, and I'm vegan, but like if I sometimes eat something like that, I don't feel like the world's about to collapse on me, right? I'm on a cruise ship, I'm having some mashed potato, I find out it's got some butter in it, I'm frustrated and angry, but I'm not going to knock myself, right? It's very rare, I must add. And this thing had some cheese on the top, and so I tasted like a piece of shredded mozzarella or whatever it was. And it was like my whole mouth exploded with overwhelm of flavor. I mean, it was like, because it had been so long since I've eaten something so I guess like for me, it was artificially flavoring, although it's from a cow, but for me, it was just too much. It was like, it was turning up the volume of the sound system too much all of a sudden. Is how I reacted. It was like, oh my goodness, like how can you eat large quantities of this? It's overwhelming. And so on the flip side, if you've come from that sort of stuff and then tasted something that's subtle, like papaya, it's like from the opposite point, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to this, but jumping forward now, like what you're saying, if like I'm out and like I happen to find out there's like something like there's butter in something.
Yeah.
Now it's just so insane. Before, when I was like really sensitive, and I would cheat or something and I would get a really, really severe reaction. And now that I've healed my gut, if I, accidentally like eat something like that, it's not that bad, like at all. And it's so crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome though.
Like, I'm like, what, like, like I might like get a little stiff or like, something like that.
Yeah.
But it is just not anything how it was before.
Yeah, how it was before is you hurt in your sternum, your jaw hurt. I mean, you had everything was flared up. You'd have this moving throughout your body to where you couldn't sleep all night. And you even said, it's so bad, I'm too hurt to even cry anymore. I mean, that's how bad you flare up. So.
Yeah. Wow. And so it feels like it's almost just like a shadow of the old reaction. Just a shadow. Like it reminds you that it doesn't want that food, but it doesn't scream at you. It just said, well, hang on. No, no more of that, please, but I'm not going to scream at you. Just be smart and do what you know is best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I because there have been times where, I've eaten junk food and it just, I mean, not so much where I got a little stiff, but it just made me feel sick, like in my stomach, like I got like a headache and just felt really sluggish and tired. And it just amazed me how I would do that before and think that it was okay and do it the next day or something. And I'm like, how do other people do this and not feel so bad that they just don't want to do it again?
Because they're used to it.
Yeah.
Normal.
It's like a lifestyle.
That's it. It feels normal. It used to feel normal to me too. I went through my whole 20s with weird digestive problems that I thought were normal. I didn't realize that it wasn't normal because all my buddies and that were all talking about the same things, whether it be massive burps or worse, and then indigestion and then, just feeling atrocious from a weekend of having a pizza and then going out and drinking beers and waking up and just feeling like the world was going to end with how bad you felt. And then thought, yeah, but that's because we're in our 20s and that's what we do or whatever. Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And so anytime recently, rarely if I've eaten junk food, I'm like, oh my God, no way. Why did I do that? I can't, it's not even the flare up. I just feel, it's mostly I just feel really tired.
Yeah.
And I hate feeling tired.
Yeah. You've got sort of premium fuel in your system right now, premium gas. And so anything that's not perfect and gives you so much energy, it just feels wrong. And that's great. I mean, I think you're basically running your body the way that we should all be running our bodies. I think you're doing the right thing. And as a result, when the wheels start to go off the road and hit that sort of thing on the side of the road, you're getting woken up straight away. But other people are dozing off into the ditch, and they thought it's normal to be in the ditch,
Yeah. No, this was really a blessing in disguise because so many people eat so bad and they don't have a reaction like we do to, that red flag to be like, no, stop. It's a gradual thing where they're like, oh, I kind of feel tired and sick, but nothing too bad. So they just continue those habits.
Yeah.
Whereas, for us, it's almost like life and death.
That's right.
Gotta be, clean and healthy, or it's totally the opposite. I'm going to feel so bad.
That's right.
Plus you were doing exercising at the same time.
Yeah.
Talk us through the exercises. What were you doing mostly and what worked best?
I was hiking a lot. There's a really nice hike right by where I live now. 5 minutes away.
Nature reserve, yeah.
Awesome.
And it's a pretty vigorous hike. There's a lot of steps and stuff. So anything to really get me sweating and get my heart rate up.
Yeah.
I knew was helping.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people, they'll go and work out and be physical and not really push themselves. Just to be like, okay, I went to the gym and I lifted some weights and that's my workout.
Yeah.
But they don't really push themselves to like sweat and like, get going.
Yeah.
Which I feel like if you're not at that point, what's the point? You gotta
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah,
you gotta really.
that's fantastic.
She had swollen. She said, my feet are swollen. They really hurt. I feel kind of stiff. I go, let's get your hiking shoes on. Let's go.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And then afterwards you would go, wow.
Yeah.
I'm always, I don't know, I'm always just so like amazed at like the progress and like how I mean, because I'm younger too, granted, but like how I could bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
Where I would wake up and I'd be really stiff and like, my shoulder would lock up and I'd be like, I'm in a lot of pain. And my mom would be like, okay, like, let's go on the bike. I had this little gym at my apartment. Let's, get your heart rate up. Let's get sweating.
Yeah.
And I would do that. And after like, it didn't go away completely, but like, it was amazing. Like how much I had movement, like, it was like locked up and like really hurting. And then I could like move it around and my fingers weren't swollen anymore. And I felt like so good after.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was crazy just getting the blood moving.
Yeah. Can totally relate to that as No, I can totally relate. And for people who think that walking is enough, it's not. We've got to take walking walking isn't adequate enough to get pain relief. To get pain relief, we have to push ourselves and sweat exactly what you just said. So that can be an elliptical at the gym, an elliptical machine. It could be a stationary bike at the gym or an actual real stationary bike. There are some little tweaks with that. We have to watch that we don't grip the handlebars too hard because it can jar into our wrists and fingers and stuff. But putting that aside, outside normal bike's good. But I find that the resistance of a stationary bike in a controlled environment, you've got nothing else to do but to think about getting your heart rate higher and getting more sweat. So I like that. And, of course, then there's Bikram yoga, which is, of course, my favorite, just with so much sweating and the heart rate goes so high and it's high for a long time. And it doesn't load or impact any of the painful joints. So there's several options. There's no excuse to not exercise daily. And if people are really debilitated, my starting point is aquatherapy and get them into a pool and have them move around in a pool just to get something happening.
Yeah.
So that was just me for other listeners or viewers, just in case they're thinking, oh, okay, maybe I'll just go for a walk. We have to try and take it to another level. Hiking is a great one. One of my big breakthroughs was in Hawaii, and it was through hiking as well, just like you've described, because it's so mountainous, right, in Hawaii. And when we would go and do some some nature walks or whatever, or bush walks as we call them in Australia, there was ups and downs, and I always was continually surprised at how my big swollen knee responded so well to ups and downs. And I thought, it doesn't make sense, but my joints like being challenged.
Yeah, no, I totally agree and found the same thing, that when, one of my bigger joints was swollen and, when you're like, at home and before, you get physical, you're like, I'm in so much pain. Why would I move around? That just seems like it's going to make it worse. And then when I get myself up and I start moving and get my heart rate up, it goes down and it feels good. Like I feel like I can get it moving and the swelling is going down.
Yeah. It gives you a wonderful sense of control too, because you're not you're not lying on a couch like a victim. You're proactively reducing the problem, and that feels great. And you combine that with like going back onto baseline for a day or two if you need to, and you've got this double boom, boom, and you totally smash the pain down quickly. And it, life doesn't seem too bad pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really have to say, like, anytime that I did have a bad flare up and I went back to the baseline foods, it never failed. Like I never got worse, or it never I was still swollen. It always went down.
Remember the B12 vitamin incident?
Yeah, my mom got me a B12 vitamin, and she didn't read the label. It had lactose in it.
It was derived from lactose, yeah.
And I had just such a bad flare up.
It lasted 18 hours of hell.
Yeah, it was really. She felt so bad.
Both of her hips.
I felt bad that she felt bad.
Yeah. What a lesson, huh? It just shows you how crazy, and this is why when people go to their rheumatologist and they're in a lot of pain and they ask the rheumatologist, look, does diet matter or something? And you can forgive them for saying no. And the reason is because you've seen firsthand what a minefield this is. You can see how there's only, in my opinion, there's not a lot of other foods other than the ones that I've collected and put together here that we can all follow and get results from and then slowly reintroduce. Like, it's not like we're missing a whole category of foods that we can also go and eat. There's a very narrow path through the mountain. And no wonder doctors say diet doesn't work, because how many people come up with this tiny narrow path through the mountain?
When we were seeing her, the other rheumatologist, not the one that they assigned, she said in front of both of us, well, because she mentioned, I'm doing this diet. And she goes, diet has nothing to do with it. And I just nodded my head and knew not to argue.
Yeah.
Because I forgave her. I understood in her point of view what her world is like in a way. And I didn't want to confront that with this very short period of time we had.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew that when we go home, we have to just go no holds barred.
Yeah. And I mean, it didn't
100%.
mean that I didn't listen to the other information that she had to offer. I took what I needed out of it, and still was following this program because I knew that it was working.
Yeah.
And I can't explain how good that felt to have that guarantee that if I went back to the baseline diet and was physically active, that I didn't have pain. Because even with this, the ALCAT test before that, it wasn't foolproof. Even though I was staying away from all the foods that I wasn't supposed to have, there was still, I would still get small flare-ups. There were still cracks in it.
Yeah.
Because we weren't addressing the cause.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I started this program and stopped being a brat and stopped, trying to find excuses. I know. When I stopped trying to find excuses and read about it and looked into the information, it made sense. There was an A and B thing in my head that clicked, that I was like, and that's how I've always been, where I'm like, if it makes sense and what I'm doing, my actions are proving that it makes sense, that's awesome.
That's it.
Yeah.
So give us just sort of a 1 or 2 minute summary on the symptomatic changes. So what is the sort of the before and after with your symptoms on a day-to-day basis before compared to now?
Drastic. Absolutely drastic. Before, I was stiff and sore every day, and I would get flare-ups every other day. Some of them were not that bad. I would get really bad flare-ups maybe once a week, which at the time, I don't know how I dealt with that. Yeah. But I did. Yeah. Like you said, we tolerate a lot when we don't realize how really bad it is. Compared to now, I can't believe it. I forget that I have it because I don't I rarely have symptoms. And when I do, I know it's because of something that I ate, or, haven't been physically active in a few days.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, it's a combination of that and like I'm like really stressed out or something.
Yeah.
But I always know why. It's not a mystery anymore.
Yes.
Which is it's such a relief to me. Yeah. Because before I was like, what is it? It was, that was really scary to me, to not know why.
Yes.
So at this point, I feel so good and I'm so thankful. Yeah.
You're welcome.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so
Alisa did. She came over yesterday with some vegan cupcakes for Mother's Day. And she had this little card she wrote to me. And do you mind if I read it?
I'd love to hear it.
Okay. She says, I love you with all my heart, and I'm so thankful for everything you have done for me. You have instilled in me so many incredible qualities that I will take with me and cherish for the rest of my life. I look up to and admire everything that you are, from your beauty and most importantly, your witty, charming, intelligent, creative, and driven personality. I am so lucky to call you my mom. Happy Mother's Day, Alisa.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. You guys have done this together. It's something that you've been through together, and life's easy from this point. Let me tell you, like, you guys have done this together. Everything else, it feels easy. Doesn't get harder than trying to recover from rheumatoid arthritis. It doesn't get harder than that.
Yeah. I mean, going through what I went through, like it's almost like a blur to me now because it was really hard. There were so many ups and downs. I'm not going to front and say, oh yeah, I coasted through it and I followed the program and, step by step and no, it was, it was really, really hard. But from the bottom of my heart, I knew it was working and I knew that it was the right thing to do. And I'm just so thankful for you. And I'm thankful for my mom that she stuck by me and did it with me. And
still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Yeah. And
that's a very good point. That's a very good point because we always do it. It's just, you do a much more broad and easier version of it. I don't expect that one day you'll ever be able to go back to cheese pizzas and Coca-Cola. Yeah. I don't expect.
And I don't want to.
Right.
I made her vegan pizza though.
That was really good.
But here's the thing. Let me tell you about it because I'm the veteran now. I've been at this a very long time. The foods that you get to enjoy, the life that you get to lead, and the attitude that you have about being a compassionate eater, not eating animals, and also just doing the right thing for the planet, yourself. You don't care about missing out on a steak on a Friday night.
It doesn't sound appealing to me anymore.
Right. But
really
you feel fantastic about living the best quality life you can, given that you were handed something that's very, very scary and very serious. And so, look, no one can change the past and the fact that something switched on inside you, and that is your cross to bear for the rest of your life. But it becomes a very, very light cross, very, very light one that just sits up on your shoulder, and you don't even care that it's there. Yeah.
It's incredible to look back and know that it was so difficult. And like you said, now, even if there is troubleshooting and, I get a flare up and it's just it's a breeze compared to what I went through before, that it's no skin off my back.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful.
So it's great. I feel so much better, mentally and physically compared to how I did before I started this program.
Are you still working at the same place?
No. So before I was working at Bubba Gump's, which is like a fried seafood restaurant.
Fried fest fiesta.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And before I started this program, I was eating there too. And like, now that I'm looking back on it, I'm like, gross. Like, I don't even.
And then you got this. You got your new job.
Yeah. So I was looking for a new job because I'd been there for like a few years and I was just like over it. And my roommate told me about this new restaurant that was opening up called True Food Kitchen. And their whole menu is based around an anti-inflammatory diet.
Wow.
Yeah. So like we got a lot of sweet potato and turmeric and their whole thing is, you can eat healthy and help your body and it can still taste good.
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't really know that before I went into the interview. I was just like, I want a new job and this place looks cool. So I'm going to go ahead and go in there.
Wow.
And so I talked to the general manager. I had my interview with him and he started, he's like, why did you want this job? I mean, I knew that like they had better food. And so I told him, I was at this other place and they had a lot of fried food and I'm in a transitional period in my life where I became vegan and I have rheumatoid arthritis and I want to be in an environment where there's other people who are on the same page as me.
Yep.
And he was like, oh my gosh, my mom has that. And he's like, you're hired. You're what this is all about. He's like, I need you.
Wow.
You wrote down.
Yeah. And he wrote, I told him about your program and he wrote down your name. And I haven't asked him, checked back about it with him if he like told his mom about it because, people will do what they will.
Sure. That's it.
I don't want to like push anything on anybody, but it was just so cool how everything just lined up. Yeah. And it was just crazy.
When you're on a lifestyle, any lifestyle you choose, serendipity happens like that. You'll find out more and more as you get older that this happens.
You attract people with the same mindset as you. Yeah. And it was just so awesome because we were doing this whole interview. And then when I said that, he's like, I need you. I need you on my team. You're exactly what we're about. And I was so excited and I still work there and it's really awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done. Well, what a story, huh? And you went back to the music festival again. Have you ever been back to the music festival where it all went?
Not that same one, but I went to other ones and was fine.
Great. So you can now participate in all of the things you should be doing, having fun at your age and doing all the fun things with all your friends. And I guess you just have to make some modifications, either eat beforehand or take special foods with you and stuff, right? It's a small little extra bit of work you have to do, but that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of these festivals have these catering trucks and vegan catering trucks.
Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of the festivals that I go to, they have a lot of vegan food carts. That's like mostly the food that they have.
It's gone upscale.
Wow. It's really cool. They're all about, renewable stuff and like recycling and, everything that's good for the environment. So if I don't eat beforehand and now, like you said, where you're in a situation where, you're hungry and you got to eat something. It's not like it's like dairy or meat or anything, but I'll have this vegan stuff, it has like oil in it or something. Yeah. But now that I have healed my gut so much, I don't get a bad reaction like I would have before.
Yeah. It's just awesome. Yeah.
It's a huge relief.
You've got a lot of sort of tolerance or a lot of buffer between the food and the reaction that you would have previously had. Mm-hmm. So, Laura, you must be so proud of your daughter. What would you like to add to what we've covered?
The gut thing. When she was allergic to berries when she was 4, her whole body broke out in hives.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine who's into nutrition told me about probiotics.
Yeah.
And I got her on those, and she no longer had the hives and could eat the berries again.
Uh-huh.
Now, interestingly, it connects to the time that she was on antibiotics because of ear infections.
Uh-huh.
And the doctors just prescribed that like it was candy.
Yeah. And
I remember both of them being on it. And that could have had to do with why she was reacting. And it all started then.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is this, I just wanted to say that for listeners out there about the gut and skin, the gut and organs, everything reacting, because your digestion, your immune system starts in the gut.
Yeah.
And so later on, when she was getting her flare-ups, her sister had called me when she had that horrible flare-up, and unbeknownst to you, it was behind your back. So called me and told me about the fact that she was crying and in such pain, that I started texting her, and without telling you that she told me, saying, hey, if you happen to have any flare-ups, I was just reading and I just texted you all this stuff. We got to get started on this program. And you just responded immediately. Mm-hmm. Both her and I did the juicing together. I was very cranky because I completely, I knew that I was quitting coffee. I was quitting sugar.
Yeah.
You know, the two main deals that woke me up in the morning. I was quitting all that. So I had withdrawals. And I remember thinking to myself while she was at work doing her juicing while working, okay, this is her interacting with people, serving as a server, juicing with no food, poor thing. I'm walking around thinking, I have this headache, withdrawal. And I went, I don't care that I'm in pain. I don't care that I have a headache, because I'm thinking of Alisa. Alisa's the one who's inspiring me to do this. So we were both had this feedback with each other.
Yeah, it's great.
So I think for anybody out there who's going through this, it does make it easier if you have an accountability buddy.
Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Yeah.
And I just want to add really quick, probiotics helped me so much.
Mm-hmm. Hey, which one did you take? Might as well get specific if you recall.
Kyodophilus 29 or something.
Or Kyodophilus 9?
Kyodophilus 9,
Okay. I'll get you just to send me the link to it, and I'll put the link in the show notes so other people. So just recently, more and more support members have been actually talking about how the probiotics have been helping them. It's so well supported in the scientific literature too. So they've done clinical trials, and in some of the cases even of the highest standard, where you've got a double-blind placebo, the whole thing. And the probiotics lower symptoms. So it's not something that is being sort of still in the kind of maybe category. I mean, it definitely helps.
Yeah.
Every time I see the science on probiotics in the gut, I share it with her, and I share it with my family, because it's real. It's not real. Quack. It's real.
That's right. Yeah. There's so many other supplements. In fact, 99% of them, it's in the kind of iffy category. But probiotics are right there in the genuine. So So we'll get the one that you took. And how did you sort of overdose or mega dose them? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as much as the
I'd
budget
have
could
3 or 4, maybe. So that and drinking a bunch of green juice always helped.
Yeah.
If I had a really bad flare up, I would just drink a bunch of green juice and take 3 or 4 probiotics, and the next day I would feel so much better. And I there were times where I didn't figure that out yet, and I felt like I just had to ride it out for a day or a day and a half. And it was just really cool how quickly that it helped my body.
No, that's great. That's great. A lot of people get a lot of benefit from that. So that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to share? I think we've covered your story and how far that you've come, and how you did this as a team together, and how Laura, you did the whole thing together. And I think that's a first. I've not seen a mother and daughter team like you guys. So that's really, really impressive. And I think we've also left the sort of feeling that, this isn't something that now, as we said before, we can go and change lifestyle back to the old ways. It's something you'll do for life, but it's something that really, for me, a lifestyle that's that's fantastic. Not a lifestyle that's restrictive. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's like a window into the future that you don't have to feel like it's an awful thing that you have to do for a long time. It's something that will help you thrive and have health and avoid other diseases like all your friends when they hit, 50s and whatever, other friends in the future, unfortunately. Like now I just turned 41 recently. I'm seeing friends have serious health conditions come up now.
Well, you know what? Even friends her age are coming up with autoimmune diseases.
Right.
It's really, it's kind of scary and shocking that like my friends are all that are my age are like, having these health problems. And I'm like, it's like as the generations go on, it's like getting younger and younger.
Yep. That seems to be the case.
And it's because of our Western diet. Yeah. I really believe that.
Yep.
There's sugar in everything, and it destroys the flora. We take too many antibiotics, it destroys the flora. And then next thing you know, somebody's got an autoimmune.
That's it. Yep, that's right. It doesn't take that much of a mess up on the inside to trigger something that you'll have for the rest of your life. It's bad, isn't it? We have to be really careful.
The average consumption of sugar was about a bag of sugar in the turn of the 19th century, and now it's 29 bags of sugar a year. And it's because it's in every single packaged food. They're putting sugar in everything, and even if you can't taste it, it's in there.
Yeah, when I was like really being aware of like what I was putting into my body, and I was reading the labels on things, I was like, sugar. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize before. Like, there's just sugar in everything.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much. I've had a great time. We've passed an hour just like that.
I know
it's been
we
a
did.
lot of fun. Yeah. So thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of really positive feedback from this episode. Do you have a Facebook page that's for sort of sharing a story, or an Instagram account that you'd like to share, or is everything really or nothing like that? You don't have to. I just thought if you're sharing your blog or journey.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I kind of use Instagram, but it's not.
It's not for this purpose. Yeah, it's just for your own personal friends. Okay, just wanted to double check. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. We really appreciate you, Clint.
Oh yeah, mutually, because I really got a lot out of this, and watching and hearing about your development and progress was really, like some of your posts, Laura, when you would post and give us updates. They were some of my favorite. Would brighten up my day hearing how you were going. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Okay. Bye bye.